Hello, my name is Wayne Botha, and this recording is specifically focused on the experience of harvesting Willamette hops and brewing a fresh hopped ale within hours of harvesting these hops. Normally, every brewer purchases packaged and processed hops before brew day. Commercially grown hops come with specification sheets, and you choose how many hops you want of each variety for your beer. You, as the brewer, are in control of your brew day. However, when you are making a harvest ale with freshly picked hops, the dynamics are different. Nature is in control, and you must brew with what you are given. You don't know the percentage alpha acid in your hops. You don't know how much the harvest will be each year. Therefore, it is more challenging to pick the hops in the morning and brew a fresh hopped harvest ale in the afternoon than it is normally to brew with commercially grown hops. This recording will walk you through some highlights and experiences that I have gained when picking hops in the morning and brewing a fresh hopped harvest ale in the afternoon. This recording is specific to Willamette hops, which is important because the variety of hops can impact the style of beer that you choose to brew as a harvest ale. I chose an English pale ale for this brew day to best suit the Willamette hops. I hope that my first-hand experiences help you to prepare for your brewing of harvest ales. You can read about harvest ales in a book, but there's nothing like learning from people with first-hand experience. It's much easier as a brewer to just purchase commercial hops. So let's talk about the benefits of growing, picking, and brewing with fresh hops versus just purchasing the hops. Number one, it is fulfilling to be connected with nature and the ingredients in your beer. Number two, it is challenging to pick the hops and then brew with them on the same day. Instead of you being on control as the brewer, you're putting yourself out there and being vulnerable because you have to brew a beer with unknown yield and unknown percentage alpha acids. Thirdly, there's a certain amount of excitement that comes along with harvest time. Nature doesn't care about your schedule. When hops are ready, they must be harvested, and there is urgency to get it done before they are past their prime. Number four, the story. Growing, picking, and brewing with fresh hops creates memories and the story for yourself and for your friends to talk about. Number five, good beer. Fresh hops make good harvest ales. And number six is just a bonus for a beer enthusiast. Hops are mysterious plants. As you grow your own hops, you will admire the way hop plants grow to 20 feet every summer, and you will realize how they respond to the summer solstice, just as they have done for centuries. So setting the stage for this recording focuses specifically on Willamette hops. These hops are grown, harvested, and brewed in South Windsor, Connecticut. This is important to know because the latitude, the climate, and microclimate impact the yield and harvest date. These hop plants are always ready to harvest in the 3rd to 4th week of July each year. These hop plants face west. They are in shade in the morning and get intense sun in the afternoon. These hops were planted around 2015 in this location from rhizomes. These hops are not irrigated, and these plants are sometimes fertilized with bat guano. This is a photo of the Willamette hops that I picked with a handful of friends. These hop plants typically yield approximately 180 ounces of wet hops every year. So let's quickly talk about some highlights of the Willamette hop variety. Willamette is primarily derived from the English variety of Fuggle hops. Willamette was released in 1971 to replace Fuggle. Willamette has spiciness with herbal, floral, and fruity notes, and you'll notice later on when I put the hops into the beer, I actually comment on that as well. Willamette does best in pale ales, English ales. That is in contrast to lagers. You don't want Willamette in a lager because the floral and fruity notes typically do not play well with the clean taste of lagers. And then finally, Willamette matures early to mid-season, And like I say, in Connecticut, this is the end of July, beginning of August. And this is important to note because you want to grow different varieties in your hop yard so that you can stagger the harvests and not have everything harvested at the same time. So how do you brew with wet hops? My first choice of using wet hops is to brew with them directly after they have been harvested, on the same day to get them straight into the boil kettle. And when you think about it, how did breweries use wet hops for centuries? They just added them to the boil kettle for a bittering addition, and so you can do the same with your wet hops. So let's talk a little bit about recipe formulation for your wet hopped harvest ale. Given that Willamette hops are typically suited for English ales, I chose an English malt. In this case, I chose the best ale malt from an English maltster for this beer. Now, I personally prefer harvest ales to be enjoyable by the glass. This means I target about 5% ABV so that I can enjoy a few pints with my friends before we all fall over. For this harvest ale, I wanted an English ale, so I targeted middle-of-the-road water additions and a mash temperature around 152 degrees. Here I am doing in the grains. I'm going to stir in between, so you'll see pieces of the video of the grain going in, and then part of me stirring as well. Here goes. And so the key here is to add grain slowly and to stir as much as possible so that the grains don't clump up, because once they clump up it becomes really hard to get them apart again. So obviously the key, like I say, is to just add the grain slowly and then stir. So let me stir for a little bit and then we'll be back. And there the grains are obviously busy going in while it's still swirling. And that's it, 12 pounds of grain in 5 gallons of strike water. That's what it looks like in the mash tun. And my mash tun, of course, is just a Rubbermaid cooler. This has proved to be very successful and has lasted many years. So after mashing in, the temperature of the mash is slowly coming up. I'm looking for about 150 to 152 degrees or so, 153. It's not particularly important as long as we're in the range. This is a pale ale, British pale ale, so as long as we're like in the range of 152, 51, it's all good. Looks like we're right there. This is 151.8, 152.2, 152.4. I'm going to call it good. This is all I need, and we're off to the races. And here we are. The wort is busy boiling, as you can see, and this is the first of the hops going in for the 2020 wet harvest ale. These are Willamette hops that we harvested this morning, and going into the boil kettle just like that. The same green hops that we harvested this morning. They go in with spiders and bugs and leaves and everything else straight out of off the hop vine into the boil kettle. That's a natural way of making beer, and it tastes pretty good, I think. Alright, all the hops are in the boil, and now they're obviously busy absorbing wort and going under the boil, under the surface. The smell is a very spicy smell. It's as if you're busy eating some sort of hot spice, not quite a chili pepper spice, more like an herbal spice, similar to broccoli in some cases, like a vegetable type aroma that's also got some spice to it. As I've said earlier, my preference is always to use wet hops directly from the vine into the brew kettle on the same day, but it can be a challenge to use up all the hops when they are wet and straight off the vine, especially when you get a large harvest. So you can preserve the hops by drying them out. I've had to store hops for weeks sometimes until I get a chance to brew with them. Fresh hops will keep a long time as long as they stay dry. The real key is that you need to spread them out on a screen. The hops need air circulation, not heat, in order to dry out. Don't use a food dehydrator to dry out the fresh hops.
Here are fresh hops that were harvested yesterday. I won't be able to use them in a brew today, and so they are just on a screen, a window screen, to get some air. Now the key with fresh hops is that you don't want to let them trap moisture to develop mold. So in this case they're just on a screen so that they can get air circulation and stay dry. They will dry out on their own over the next few days, and it doesn't matter how long they sit on the screen, they'll still maintain the lupulin. Do not put these hops into a dehydrator. They need air, just room temperature air. They do not need to be dehydrated with heat.
Okay, so I'm going to wrap up this recording with some tacit knowledge gained from calloused first-hand experience. Number 1, the terroir does not come through in the final beer. Terroir impacts the yield and the harvest date of hop yards. Number 2, wet hops are best used for bittering, not for late hopping or dry hopping. And I know this is contrary to a lot of literature. Many authors claim that you should use wet hops for late hopping, but in my experience, wet hops used in late hopping or in dry hopping leave a wax-like taste in the final beer, which I do not like. Number 3, go heavy on the hop additions when brewing with fresh hops. You can easily double the hop additions in your recipe and still not have very bitter beer. It seems as if the bitterness is less intense than with pelletized hops. Number 4, wet hops don't absorb much wort. Many publications warn a brewer about compensating for wort loss with whole hops. This is not true for wet hops. I found that only an additional 1/4 gallon wort is lost in a 5-gallon batch when I'm using wet hops compared to pelletized hops. Number 5, when you get friends together and pick the hops, you can expect 10 ounces per hour per friend. If you have 5 friends, then plan to get 50 to 75 ounces per hour. This means that you need a lot of friends for harvest day for a 200-ounce hop harvest